Mexico City stretches as far as the eye can see. The city is the heart of the country, its administrative, commercial, cultural, and scientific center. Mexico City is also the biggest transport hub in Latin America. It has a stock exchange, and more than half the country's industrial output is manufactured here. "20 million people live in and around the metropolis, and as many as 1,000 more arrive each day. Stark contrasts can be seen everywhere, between rich and poor, new and old, first world and third world. It's one of the most fascinating cities in the world. Mexico is full of contradictions. The contrasts and extremes are so striking, especially in the neighborhoods that are most densely inhabited. There's one street that's made up of 400 steps. It's incredible. You see this endless staircase, and on the one side are really poor, run-down houses, and on the other, lawns belonging to a rich neighborhood.
De las zonas residenciales pegadas.
The people of Mexico City are very active. They like to be in control. That helps makes it such a lively place. At the same time, I think it's a very cosmopolitan city with lots of variety, despite all the challenges and problems it faces. I love the variety. That's what connects Mexico with the world's other great cities. When the Aztecs came here in the 14th century, this mountain plateau, on which Mexico City would later be built, was covered with swamps and lakes. Trees, fruit, and vegetables all grew abundantly in the fertile soil. It was an ideal place to settle. The Aztecs built a system of dikes, dams, and canals to try to control the water. Nonetheless, rainwater from the surrounding mountains regularly caused floods that killed thousands. All over the city, one can still find traces of the old harbor villages. The lakes, however, have gone. The Spanish conquerors didn't trust the Aztecs' water management system, and in 1789 built a canal to drain the entire area. That meant there was plenty of room to settle across the plain. Little attention was paid to the fact that the soil of the dried-out lake beds was really too soft to build on, that there wasn't much drinking water, and that the risk of earthquakes was very high. The population today is almost 20 times what it was a century ago, and the city is still growing, mainly upwards nowadays. When there's a little money to spare, people often add another story to their homes. Urban planning is a term you rarely hear. At the very edge of the city, in a district as far from the center as you can get, where there's a view out over the wide Valley of Mexico, there's a really amazing group of people who are trying to create a sense of community and something like city life there, way out on the periphery. It's as if they're teaching us a lesson from the edge about how to reconcile social concerns and the development of urban space. Mexico City is walled in by mountains. The city ends where the slopes are too steep to build on. Miravalle, that outlying district to the east of the city, is just 15 years old. When settlement began, there was no infrastructure and no plan. While other communities nearby still have no electricity or sewerage system or rubbish collection service and suffer high rates of crime, things here have been changing. The residents have begun to organize, to discuss what needs to be done, and to tackle together the problems they face. Promoting ecological issues is also really important for us. It's part of our project's educational program. We want to create a new mindset, one that respects the environment and seeks to cooperate with it. That's something new in such an outlying neighborhood. Normally, ecology only plays a role in more prosperous areas where there are more natural resources. But change is possible here too. Small-scale activities and movements can engender great changes in our community. Trash, for example. It took 2 years for the people here to grasp that rubbish shouldn't be left on the street, or that some materials can be reused. It took a couple of years' work, but we've now made people here more aware of the issues. Jorge has been involved in the project from the start. Their location at the edge of the city means people here are particularly dependent on the environment. Water is scarce, there's the risk of landslides, there's no municipal rubbish collection. So they've set up bins all over the neighborhood for plastic trash. They sort it and shred it and sell it to big chemical companies. That means the streets are now cleaner, and there's work at the project for 30 people. They've now started to farm the steep slopes next to the recycling station. They want to grow their own food. I used to sell things on the street. Here they've created new opportunities for us. First corn, soon chickens, and they're going to build a rainwater retrieval system. 2 streets away is the project center. With the support of the city government, a small new neighborhood center has been created. More than 200 people come here every day for an inexpensive lunch. And much of the food already comes from their local farming venture. Jorge and the other initiators of the neighborhood project say good nutrition is a key to a healthier life, and thus to a better life. We want to create a space, above all for children and teenagers, where we can promote their development in cultural and educational terms, but also in terms of health and nutrition. That's our main goal, to organize the community for the benefit of the children and youngsters. A working group is responsible for each venture of the Miravalle Community Council. It assigns tasks and sets the agenda. Every afternoon, the children come to the center. This is the only place where there are computers. In the library, they can get help with their homework or extra tutoring, and there are all kinds of after-school activities. If the young learn, play, and do sports together, that enhances communication and a sense of responsibility throughout the community. And that in turn makes it much harder for criminals and drug gangs. Miravalle is unique, exceptional. Life here really is different. It's becoming an example, a model for what could be achieved in other districts across Mexico City. Problems here seem to be growing greater all the time. The philosopher Carlos Monsiváis, who died recently, called it the chauvinism of catastrophe. This idea that ours is the biggest, dirtiest, and most dangerous city in the world. This sense of enormity is part of the special character of the city's inhabitants. We have a constant feeling of fragility.
De alguna manera, que es la manera como lo vivimos la ciudad, nos da esa sensación de fragilidad constante.
Mexico City continues to grow as people move here from across the country in search of work. Life on the land is extremely tough. The prices for agricultural products have been falling for years, so it's becoming ever harder to make a living farming. Though the region's soil is rich, it can no longer feed the people. What used to grow in and around the city is now shipped in from remote parts of the country, or even imported from other Latin American countries, including the Mexican specialty, cactus. The chaotic growth of the city means life in the city can be chaotic. There are 4 million cars, traffic jams often last hours. The environmental problems are massive, crime rates are high, and many people don't use public transport because it's too dangerous. Gangs stake claims to entire neighborhoods, marking out their territory with shoes. Those with money live in gated and guarded compounds. The chaos makes the city divide into segments. Until a few years ago, Iztapalapa was one of the most dangerous districts in Mexico City. Nobody would have dreamt of going for a stroll here or opening a shop on this street. Even the police stayed away. When they hear a gunshot, the young men here can still tell you what kind of weapon was used.
What
with all the shootings, it was a really difficult situation, hearing and feeling the bullets flying past your head and your body. Sadly, we got used to that feeling. It became quite normal. You'd see people running away and getting killed in the shootouts. That made us start thinking. We realized we were toying with our future and our lives, and that we really wanted to take charge of our lives. We'd had enough and wanted to change things. We were fed up feeling hunted and turning round to look back at every corner to see that nobody from another gang was coming to knife you. So we decided to change our neighborhood. So in the early 1990s, more than 30 gangs got together to try something entirely new. The problem is not belonging to a gang, but what the gang members do, what they get up to. To accept that is crucial for the identity and the pride of the city. This used to be the battlefield. Sometimes gangs from other districts would come for a gun battle. Sometimes soccer games ended in knifings. These boys say their friends are either dead or in jail, or they're here at the sports and recreation center they've created themselves. Once the most dangerous spot far and wide, this is now a meeting place for children, youngsters and families from all over the area. Admission is free. Graffiti is central to the project. They say in no other kind of art is the distinction between what's legal and what's illegal so clear. Attention here is focused on the children. Roberto and his gang know all too well how easy it is for the young, even the very young, to go astray here. They want to offer an alternative. We had to start from scratch. As with any project, we first got together and experimented until we came up with this, our community center. In 15 years, it's not received any financial support from the government. We're not like other organizations which get 5 or 7 million pesos a year so they can offer a wide range of courses. We have to try to make it from one year to the next and find somebody or some institution with a good heart. It's a continuous struggle. They're fighting drugs, crime, violence, and discrimination. Graffiti's become an important means to do so. Hundreds come every week to attend courses in graffiti art. Many of the students have won prizes, been accepted to art schools, or hired by big corporations for their advertising campaigns. And when a wall needs decorating, the municipality also commissions work from these artists.
par de elementos y vamos a ver qué tanta facilidad de observar. El dibujar no es otra cosa más que observar las cosas. ¿Cómo empezamos? Sí, pues obviamente en mi
When I was a teenager, I started out like everyone else in the graffiti scene. Every sprayer knows the illegal side of graffiti. As for me, I've sprayed in the subway. We used to climb on top of the underground trains and climb up billboards. And I've sprayed houses. But there are always so many repercussions. Many of my friends who did the same kind of thing became drug addicts. Many fell off bridges and were badly hurt or even disabled. If a bus driver caught us spraying, he'd beat us up. Eventually, you wake up to the implications. And I said to myself, if graffiti is so important for me, then I have to find a way to pursue it without creating all these problems.
Busqué la manera de seguirlo haciendo sin tener tantos problemas.
The graffiti school of Iztapalapa has changed the city.
La violencia que había antes,
There's no comparison between the level of violence there used to be here and today's level,
me refiero en cuanto
at
al
least
barrio,
here in this
al
district.
menos en esta zona, en este
People
barrio.
used to be murdered for any little
Antes,
thing.
por cualquier cosa mataban a
Somebody
un
was killed here every day
barrio,
in fights
había un
between
conflicto
gangs and
cada
power
día,
struggles.
o cada tercer día
Nowadays,
por
the youngsters have alternatives. They can choose to do something good or something bad.
Ahora ya hay más alternativas. Los chavos pueden escoger si quieren hacer algo bueno o algo malo.
Informal structures, informal settlements, and the informal economy all still play an important part in Mexico City. About a third of the population lives below the official poverty line. Until a few years ago, the state was the biggest entrepreneur and employer. Deregulation and privatization only started recently. In new commercial zones, high-rise office buildings are shooting up. Textiles, electronics, and chemicals companies. Multinationals are building their Latin American headquarters here. Santa Fe in the far west of the city is the new banking district. The commercial real estate here is the most expensive in Latin America. But this too is Santa Fe.
Toda la gente que perdió casas en el centro.
All the people who lost their houses or apartments in the center of the city in the big earthquake of 1985 were dumped in Santa Fe.
Hacia esa zona.
They started to build themselves new homes in a simple, disorganized, but ultimately complex fashion.
Porque además están divididos como por.
There was no communication among the residents. You have to walk up 400 or 500 steps from the floor of the valley to the very top. The utility companies have no access, and the rubbish trucks have no access. So people just throw their trash out of the windows of their little houses. The rubbish pollutes the groundwater and the stream running through the neighborhood. The private Ibero-American University is located right at the seam between the old and the new Santa Fe. It just happened that way, but the rector saw an important opportunity to make contact with the neighbors. To get along well, you have to get to know each other. A true partnership has since developed. The university has a daycare center for the children of local women who take classes. Some of these children had never before left the homes they were born in. Some had to work at home while their parents were working. And one girl was just left out on the street when her mother went to work as a cleaner in a rich person's house.
Yo voy a llegar al techo.
A ver si podemos. Pero con cuidadito, con cuidadito.
Sociologist Lorena Alvarez initiated the outreach project at the university.
Y nos enseñaron un dibujo.
Some local people showed me a drawing they'd made of an open space and some playground equipment, and they said, "Can't you help us make our dream a reality? We dream of making life better here in the neighborhood. We want to create places our children can play in, How can we achieve that? That's how it began. We started to work together. In our project, we dream and hope together. We share a vision of the future, and we're taking steps to make that vision come true. Santa Fe is built on very steep hills. When it rains, the roads are like mountain streams. If you're old or carrying a child, you can hardly make it to the top. Rubbish finds its way downhill and into the small stream. It had always been like this since the neighborhood was first settled. The sociologists at the university say you have to change the spaces people live in to change the way they live. So they asked their colleagues in the architecture department for help. Then, together with local residents, they first cleaned up the river and laid out new paths. It was really sad and dingy on this hillside. Like over there, all the houses were grey. With this project, we've really improved the area. The quality of life is higher. It's safer. The houses have been repaired and painted, and proper paths have been built. There was no decent way to get from one street to the next. It was so steep that people couldn't walk along here. As part of our project, we started to build these paths to connect the streets. I've always been concerned about the injustice and the extreme poverty in Mexico City. We came here from the university to work together on finding solutions. The results have been very good. We really enjoy working with the community here. They've replaced the steepest stretches with ramps at a gentler incline. Suddenly, people in wheelchairs or pushchairs can get around, visit their friends, meet new people. A kind of central or downtown area has been created. One house was turned into a community center. Local people tend the fruit and vegetables growing in the greenhouse. There are courses for children and for the elderly. They can learn to read and write and get a certificate issued by the university. My hopes for the future? Well, first, a better quality of life. Of course, that's a very abstract concept. Top priorities are to improve health, the surroundings, working conditions, nutrition. One part of the project involves buying groceries wholesale and selling them cheaply in the community. If you have a healthy stomach, you absorb more oxygen and you do better at school and you're generally fitter. That improves the quality of life. Our goal is, bit by bit and step by step, to improve the conditions here.
Paulatinamente, como vamos haciendo paso a pasito, con pasos pequeños pero seguros, para que este entorno sea mejor.
Here too, it's the local people themselves who are working to solve problems, with the help of Lorena Alvarez from the Ibero-American University. They're now planning to build a clinic and are looking for backers and partners from the wealthy commercial zone next door. At present, healthcare assistants are being trained in somebody's living room, women who can teach people about healthy living and health risks. A district in the shadow of high-rise bank headquarters is changing. Two very different worlds are starting to cooperate. As many as 4,000 people die each year in Mexico City because of the smog. You can hardly ever see from one end of the city to the other. Although it's at an elevation of 2,300 meters, it's almost surrounded by even higher mountains, which tend to trap the smog. As the city grows, it consumes ever more energy. It might yet choke on its own development. A growing awareness of the immense and complex problems is prompting change, slowly but surely. Every Sunday, one of the main avenues is closed to cars and cyclists roam free. Just a few years ago, cycling was forbidden. Now one can borrow bikes all over the city at no charge. A city is more than just a place to make money, and people need more than just a roof over their heads. In front of the stock exchange, gymnastics for everyone. The municipality is promoting bike tours, community runs, and health education.
Pero sí creo que es una ciudad fascinante.
I think it's become a really interesting city. And in terms of the arts, we're not as backward as we were 10 or 15 years ago. We had to wait forever for an interesting exhibition to come here, or for some major cultural event, 5, 10, or even 20 years. Nowadays, Mexico is much more open in this regard. The city has really developed in interesting ways in recent years. The rate of growth has slowed. Many of the city's informal structures are becoming more stable. Mexicans see the growth of their capital city as a challenge. In the competition among the world's mega cities, Mexico is certainly holding its own. More and more banks, insurers, electronics companies, and other modern industries are setting up shop here. That's encouraging for the residents. The sun doesn't set in Mexico City, it disappears somewhere above the city into the smog. For a couple of hours, the city is simply endless, a sea of lights as far as the eye can see. The smog has a couple of hours to drift away before the 20 million people here wake up, and their 4 million cars, on this highland plateau that was once a lake, and that no one imagined would become the biggest city in Latin America.